to Tifo IRL, our brand new channel. Today we're going to have a quick look at Jadon Sancho, what he's good at doing and what he might do for England were he given the opportunity. Before we get started on that, I'd like to direct you to theathletic.com/Tifo Football, where you can find lots of great writing about England and also follow Rafa Honigstein on the Bundesliga if you want to see how Borussia Dortmund, Jadon Sancho's club, are doing. So without further ado, Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho is really, really good at football. This is probably a statement of the obvious, but for those of you who maybe don't follow the Bundesliga regularly, it is worth stating just how good he is. So of players in Europe's top 5 leagues who've played over 1,100 minutes this season, Sancho is 24th for goals plus assists minus penalty kicks. There are only two other English players in that top 25. Harry Kane is 8th, Phil Foden is 25th. Sancho's played 7,500 minutes for Dortmund across 4 seasons. He's got 38 goals, 45 assists in 82 starts. And this young player really has the potential to be one of the game's absolute elite wingers. So we're going to have a look at what he does for Dortmund. There's a thing with Sancho where, because he is very, very good at carrying the ball, he's very, very good at dribbling, and he does that kind of nice cut in from the left-hand side and bend a shot around, he's quite a kind of YouTube highlights player, and I don't mean that pejoratively, but what it means is that there are facets of his game which maybe don't come through if you're just browsing the highlights. So while it's worth recognizing that those things are great skills and he does them fantastically well, there is actually a subtlety and an intelligence to Sancho's game, which is hugely beneficial for Borussia Dortmund and could well be beneficial for England as well. So let's look at what he does for Dortmund now. So Borussia Dortmund didn't have a really smooth sailing season. Lucien Favre was dismissed in mid-December, Edin Terzic came in, but despite that, Sancho has continued to excel, and as Rafa Honigstein points out in a piece in The Athletic, which is really worth reading, he came up big particularly towards the end of the season with goals in the Pokal against Leipzig, and also 2 goals and 2 assists in the final 3 games that pushed Dortmund back towards Champions League qualification. So Dortmund are kind of quite a tactically flexible team under Terzic and Favre before. They played a variety of different systems, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. Sancho has tended to play either on the left-hand side as a winger or the right-hand side as a winger. He does different things in both of these 2 positions, and it's worth looking at both of these things. So this would be Sancho here, possibly, or here. And if he's on this side, what we expect to see from him much more is, if we select a nice colour here, we expect to see these sorts of runs in here or in here, and he has the ability to carry the ball in field and then curl, that is not what we want to do, and then curl shots into this sort of area as a kind of classic inverted winger. If he plays on this side, on the right-hand side, he's more of a sort of touchline stretching winger who will go round the outside and deliver crosses, but he's also perfectly capable of driving towards the centre. As we've said before, Sancho is really, really good at carrying the ball. He's an excellent dribbler, progressive carries as well, so carries that beat the man and advance the ball either into the penalty area or 5 yards towards the opponent's goal with each carry. He's fantastic. And this is particularly effective for Dortmund in counter-attacking transitions. So let's have a look at the board here. Let's assume that Dortmund are defending a corner. So the opposition are all up in this sort of area. Generally speaking, they'll be quite high up the pitch. It's going to be slightly messy, but we'll do it anyway. And Sancho, we'll have him as the left winger here, will occupy this sort of space. So the ball comes in and it's cleared out nicely. And what Sancho's then able to do is he's able to carry the ball. And he can take it infield, he can take it up the pitch like this, and he has really, really good close control, really good dribbling. His ability on the ball with the balance, the switches of direction is exceptional, and that's the kind of YouTube highlight stuff that we're talking about. But what's crucial about Sancho is that when he moves with the ball, he has incredible awareness of where everybody else is. So he's not just a head down, carry it, dribble towards the opposition goal and kind of figure out what's happening as he's going along. He'll constantly be looking up. So Dortmund have obviously got Erling Haaland up front, and Haaland is very, very good at making runs into the box in this sort of area or from this sort of position here. And so when Sancho is running, what he's always looking for is where is this run coming from and where's it going to end up? And that means that if Haaland starts to make this run across here, let's say the offside line sort of here, then Sancho's going to come back inside and he's going to play across this way so that Haaland's then got a nice angle to run into. If Haaland starts going directly through the centre, Sancho will take it wide and then he'll look to get right across to the byline and pull it back. The point with this is that obviously in transition, broken play, counter-attacking, having somebody who's really fast and really good at dribbling is important, but end product is more important. Getting the ball away from your own goal only serves half a purpose, but because Sancho is incredibly aware, because when he's dribbling, he'll look down at the ball, but then he'll be looking up and he'll be scanning around, he often turns these opportunities into actual scoring opportunities rather than just breaking away from play. There's a couple of other really important things that Sancho's good at, so we'll look at those now. If we get the opposition back into more of a sort of standard defensive pose, and again, we'll leave Sancho here on the left because that's probably where he's at his most dangerous because of that joint ability to pass but also to shoot. There we go, I think that's probably enough opposition. Sancho's really, really good at changing the angle of an attack. And again, this comes from this awareness, this positional awareness and intelligence that I was talking about before. So if you're a player like Sancho here and you know that you can beat this man, either by going outside or coming in field, there is a temptation just to beat him and then kind of hit it into what we called in a previous video, the corridor of uncertainty. Now, obviously that is dangerous, but what Sancho's great at doing is pausing. So there's a really nice kind of combination here with a player who's incredibly dynamic with the ball at his feet, but also unafraid to stop, take a moment, whether that's fronting a defender up or even once he's beaten the man, so that he can then release the pass with exactly the right weight to exactly the right kind of direction. So there was a goal where he assisted where he's out here, he's got the ball like this, and he carries it infield here. Now obviously there is a shooting opportunity for him in this direction, but there's also a good run here. Now the opposition have defenders here, so a straight pass like that, it's not going to be massively effective because there's a good opportunity these guys can close down. Similarly, a shot like this, it's a fairly low percentage effort when you've got defenders there. But because this player here makes a really intelligent run like that, even as Sancho is moving infield at some considerable pace, he's able to stop, check, and then change the angle of attack so that the ball is played through to this player here, who is then able to get a shot off and score. And that's the kind of movement coupled with the ability to recognize the game situation around him and the technical ability to execute that pass that makes Sancho incredibly dangerous in tight spaces. There's a similar example, this time it's against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Sancho's actually out on the right-hand side. Jude Bellingham is here, Haaland's about here, and Gladbach are actually in a pretty good defensive posture at this point in time. So Sancho carries the ball in field like this, and he sees that Bellingham is advancing. And what he does is he plays the ball actually slightly behind Bellingham, which draws this player in as Bellingham has to kind of stop and check. Sancho continues his run, takes a return pass here from Bellingham. These two defenders actually react really quickly and really well here. And again, this is where Sancho stops, pauses, rather than shoot in a low percentage effort where the goalkeeper's quite close up and can block, he then makes a return. Oh no, let's get rid of that. He then makes a very cute little pass through here. Haaland makes this run. All of the Gladbach defenders are taken out of the game. The goalkeeper's on the wrong side of the goal because he's fronting up to Sancho, which is exactly the right thing to do. Boom, goal. And it's a really, really lovely piece of play. Quick feet, quick thinking, and fantastic execution. And again, the point here is that Sancho gets himself into a really good position to do the sort of thing that we expect from him, which is to score great goals. But because he's such an intelligent player, he recognizes in that moment that actually shooting is not the right thing to do, and is able to execute a really cute little pass through a couple of defenders and set somebody else up for their shooting opportunity. So Sancho has this bag of tricks, right? He can carry the ball at pace, he can dribble, he can beat defenders, and it looks fantastic. But actually what we're dealing with here is a player who is an exceptional all-round creative player. He can score, but his assisting is often predicated on a really intelligent understanding of his teammates' movements, their position, the speed that he has to put on the pass, the weight, so that the ball is in the right area when his teammate gets there. And that's the kind of thing that really is what makes Sancho such an elite player. The kind of player who, if you look at FB Ref's comparison things, Sancho's closest comparison is Lionel Messi. So that gives you an indication statistically of how good he is. But I think when you watch him a lot, rather than just these sort of highlights that we've talked about, that's the appreciation that you get of him. You get the appreciation of a player who is playing up here rather than just with what he's doing with his feet. So now let's have a quick look at what he might be able to do for England. Okay, so now we're going to have a quick look at what Sancho might do for England. Now he's played about 900 minutes for England, but obviously so far hasn't featured in Euro 2020, and this to his German audience is completely baffling, to the extent that Christoph Kramer, who was a midfielder in the 2014 World Cup squad and is now a German TV pundit, was kind of moved to ask, like, what is the reason for this? Is it even potentially a disciplinary thing? Because he couldn't get his head around why a player that he watches week in, week out wasn't starting for England. There is no indication, by the way, that there is any kind of disciplinary issue. I just want to make that very, very clear. This again is referenced in that Rafa Honigstein piece. England obviously are well stacked with attacking players. And so Sancho is going up against a number of other exciting players who are, you know, clamouring for inclusion. So there's a lot of people who would like to see Jack Grealish playing off the left-hand side. Phil Foden has actually done, I think, really quite well playing off the right-hand side. Was really the only England player to offer a consistent threat against Scotland. Sancho, I think, probably works best off the left, but could play in either position. Obviously on the left currently the incumbent is Raheem Sterling. And this is not going to be a let's dig out Raheem Sterling session, because there's no real point in that. Sterling does bring a lot to the team in terms of his link-up play, his movement and his pressing. But I do think it's worth examining what Jadon Sancho could do were he given the opportunity. So this is England's setup, generally speaking. It's a 4-3-3, but it's a kind of staggered 4-3-3. Calvin Phillips over here played a more advanced role against Croatia, ended up sitting a little bit deeper alongside Declan Rice against Scotland. Mason Mount here tends to occupy this sort of advanced 8-10 kind of position. So he's looking to push up here. Against Scotland, we had Luke Shaw on the left-hand side, and I think that's really important for what we might see with Sancho. So Sancho's going to be here, and what we're going to do is look at some of the patterns that England might try and create. Now, as we've said for a start, Sancho's really, really good at carrying the ball. So against teams maybe later on who are looking to compress the space, play higher up the pitch, this is assuming that England breeze through the rest of qualification and end up playing some of the better teams, Sancho's ability just to relieve the pressure and carry the ball up the pitch is going to be really important. So that's worth noting. But it's in constructed play that I think he offers the greatest benefit. So England didn't really do that well against a compact defence with the Scots, and some of the passing and movement and combinations was lacking pace. There was also this issue where even when the fullbacks were getting into quite a degree of space, particularly Reece James on the right-hand side, the ball wasn't getting out across to them quickly. So what might Sancho be able to do to alleviate those kinds of issues? Well, England are good when they're playing at pace with these combinations on the left-hand side. So if Luke Shaw is pushing up here, Sancho's here, Mason Mount's making this sort of run in here, Harry Kane potentially dropping off here, then you can see very quickly how if Sancho's standing a player up here, Luke Shaw's overlapping runs like this, or Sancho going wide outside, dragging that defender, and having these underlapping runs here like that. This is the kind of thing that Dortmund do really effectively. They have aggressive fullbacks. They've either got Guerrero or Schultz on the left-hand side, who makes exactly these kinds of runs. And the central midfielders, or the 10, someone like Julian Brandt, for example, or Marco Reus, is also looking to burst forwards in this left half space. Of course, Sancho's ability to carry the ball in field as well and create a real kind of shooting threat from there naturally encourages the defenders to compact themselves, again, leaving a load of space in this sort of area, which England, when they're at their fluent best, will exploit with Mason Mount making these outside runs here, Shaw here, for example, or even Harry Kane drifting over to this side. And what we've seen in this tournament is that teams that are able to get really good numerical overloads, particularly on the left-hand side, and I'm thinking here of Germany, who obviously do use a wing-back formation that gives them a certain advantage here, but teams are vulnerable in their own defensive right-hand side and the opponent's left-hand side. And quick combinations of play, executed with precision, can unlock defences. They've done it all tournament, and England have shown that this is exactly the kind of way that they want to play in qualification. They've shown this in some of the friendlies, but in this tournament so far, it hasn't really clicked because there hasn't been that degree of pace. And I think Jadon Sancho could really add exactly this. The other thing that's interesting is that when England play out from the back, sometimes what you'll see is Harry Kane obviously dropping off here. Now, Jordan Pickford has actually, I think, been really good this tournament so far, surprising quite a few people, and his distribution has been excellent. If we've got the ball here, Harry Kane can drop off into this sort of space in between the lines and be found with direct passes, perhaps from Pickford, or maybe Mings dropping off into the pocket here. And then Sancho is exactly the right kind of player to make these bursting runs beyond. Because he has this awareness of where everybody else is as well, what that means is if you have Foden making the same sort of runs, Sancho can beat his men here, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to take a shot if the goalkeeper's coming out, for example. He's got the awareness to then square the ball to Foden, who's going to be able to hit it with his left foot. You can get these really nice, quick counter-attacking opportunities. And Harry Kane, who has been fairly peripheral this tournament, but we have seen for Spurs his ability to drop off and release quick runners in behind with an exceptional range of passing. And again, Sancho's natural inclination is to be able to do that. But at the same time, if we're playing a bit shorter, let's get rid of some of these. So Kane is still here receiving the ball, but the defensive line is perhaps a little bit more aggressively set and trying to close down. Sancho can drift out here. Kane can play this sort of pass, and then Sancho's got the option either to go round the outside or to come infield, where Mason Mount is going to be making runs that bisect and create exactly the kind of cutback pass that Sancho really thrives off, or potentially even Foden coming back into the game here. And this is the point with Sancho. What you're not going to get just, and I hasten to add just, is a player who will take the ball to feet and run. He will add that drive and dynamism. He will get fouled. He will take players on. He will do nutmegs. Everyone will get excited and get up out of their seat. But you also have this end product. And England, particularly with Foden, Mount and Kane, have the kind of technical players who can execute quick combination play that Sancho would really thrive in. With an overlapping attacking left back, whether it's Luke Shaw or Ben Chilwell, you've got the sort of player who will make underlapping or overlapping runs to create those numerical overloads in the left half space that Sancho thrives on. It seems like there is a really clear tactical argument here for letting Sancho play on the left-hand side and just seeing what he can do. Now, with the caveat, as we've said before, he's up against Grealish, he's up against Sterling. England are well stacked in this position. He could play on the right-hand side instead of Foden, but that would feel a bit harsh on Foden, who I think's been really, really good. So I suppose really we should celebrate the fact that we've, got a player for England who is this talented, who can do all of these sorts of things. And if Gareth Southgate gives him the opportunity, I think what we'll see is the sort of player that the German audience who watch Jadon Sancho week in, week out for the Bundesliga are well aware of. Not someone who is just pace and flicks and skills, but an incredibly intelligent, positionally aware player who could be the missing piece for England on the left-hand side. So that's Tifo IRL. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, comment on it, and subscribe to the channel. Continue to support what we're doing, and we'll bring you more content across the Euros and beyond. Thank you very much.